as he's known, Ariel Helwani, exposed for framing Du Plessis as a racist for defending himself against racism, question mark. The MMA guru, the young gentleman down south, like, he's pretty much on point with this video. I didn't actually watch the MMA hour. You know, looks like he's doing it from his home again. Don't want to drive into, you know, central New York and stuff. And he has to sit down with Mr. Du Plessis, the South African. He still resides there, doing his thing. So let's look at this. Let's look at some of this, or let's even listen to some of this.
Media have been trying to paint Dricus Du Plessis as a racist. Simple as that. They
okay. No, let's let it go.
keep trying to do it. Ariel Helwani really overstepped the line, in my opinion, in his last interview with Dricus Du Plessis, which we're going to watch today and go through, and I'm going to give my comments about it and break it down, because I feel like, although a lot of people feel like I'm the channel that just criticizes all of the fighters, I'm also the channel that defends the fighters as well. When the other media members saying this, I should play this first, and I'm going to play this first. This is what Dricus Du Plessis said quite some time ago now, after his last win against Derek Brunson. I'm going to play it to you guys.
Well, I mean, did those belts ever go to Africa? As far as I know, it came to America and New Zealand. I'm going to take a belt to Africa. I'm the African fighter in the UFC. Myself and Cameron, we breathe the African air. We wake up in Africa every day. We train in Africa, we're African born, we're African raised. We still reside in Africa, we train out of Africa. That's an African champion, and that's who I'll be.
So Dricus Du Plessis says that as at an interview, and Usman responds to this. Israel Adesanya eventually responded to it after his fight with Alex Pereira.
Now let's pause it here, because there were nuances and layers to this whole thing. Now let's look at it from the surface, the very, very surface, and exactly what was said. I don't know what the question was for Du Plessis' response, but there's nothing wrong with what he said. Nothing whatsoever. He, lineage-wise, we can maybe go back maybe 6 generations. He's 4. Those generations of people wouldn't have maybe come, per se, from Africa. They may have been residing in Europe, should we say. Yes, indeed, that is correct. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about him being born there, having citizenship, having a passport that says he's damn South African. He still lives there. He's still training there. He's not fighting out of Boca Raton, Florida, by way of South Africa. He's fighting from South Africa. So it's a very simple point. It's so simplistic. It's unbelievable. And I'm very disappointed that Ariel Helwani, who generally is down the line to a point, is champion and even highlighting this. This isn't even a topic for discussion. The two former champion, well, now champion, whoever one's a former champion, Usman, they responded themselves, and we're going to hear Usman's response, which then underlines the other nuance, or the other part of the conversation, the other layer. We take a German Shepherd away from Germany, and we breed that same German Shepherd in China or in Britain. It's still a German Shepherd. So that point is valid also. But going back to the start, there is no controversy in what he said. Israel is in New Zealand, and Usman lives in America. What are we talking about? If there's something to talk, reference, nationality and race in a negative kind of sense, of course we can have the conversation, but this is just folly.
UFC 287, and this is what Ariel Helwani is sort of going after Dricus Du Plessis for. I don't see anything wrong with this statement whatsoever. He's correct. He was born and raised in Africa. He started his MMA training in Africa.
I've never even mentioned color because it makes absolutely no difference.
He's never mentioned it, and he didn't ever mention it. He literally played the role of Leon Edwards, talking about being the first champion out of the UK when talking about Michael Bisping, who went over to America to become a champion in the UFC. It's exactly the same thing, but he said it with a little bit of an edge to it because Adesanya is a potential opponent, and so is Kamaru Usman, who was talking about moving up divisions, and who knows where Usman's going to go with his career. So he talked about them as potential opponents. So he had a little bit of edge to it, but he didn't bring up race in any way whatsoever. And it's so annoying to hear Ariel make it about this. But that's not the only moment. I'm going to go on further into this interview. And I was just annoyed listening to it. So he brings up what Dricus said in response to Israel Adesanya. And Dricus defends himself and says, this is what I said. I didn't make it about race. And they show Adesanya's response. And we move on to another moment here from Ariel Helwani. But there's going to be an advert first. Reading out Dricus Du Plessis' statement in response to Israel Adesanya, mentioning him at the press conference after UFC 287.
So you won't say my name, that's smart, you better not. I don't need your airtime at all. I have my whole continent of Africa, all caps behind me. Go enjoy your very spectacular victory at home in New Zealand. UFC Africa is far from being done, at least another year. I'll meet you.
Now that statement, this is from his coach, that, or whoever it's from, that's a bit questionable. The whole continent of Africa on his back. That's a bit of an overstretch there. I think the whole continent of Africa will be more behind Israel Adesanya and Usman. Yeah, that's questionable.
To a neutral ground this year, and if you still feel so strongly after facing me and I take your belt home, I'll give you another chance to come and try to face me on, all caps, my home soil of Africa. We are Africa, we fear nothing and certainly nobody.
This is absolutely true. Adesanya's home is not Africa. He's in New Zealand right now, training at CKB, and he's been at New Zealand for the past
But Mr. Guru, you can't co-sign the fact that he's saying he's going to have the whole continent of Africa on his back. Like he's running things, like he's now the new prince / king of Africa. Like, what are we talking here? We can't just go straight to the logical element of it, which has no necessarily bearing on the racial connotations which Mr. Ariel and others are bringing into it. Interesting.
however many decades of his life. You know, this is absolutely true. And Dricus has every right to say this. By the way, in response to Kamaru Usman, this is something that is a different twist to what Dricus Du Plessis is saying. Usman said this about Dricus Du Plessis, saying earlier on that he's going to be the first fighter to do it out of Africa as a born and raised, trained in Africa, African UFC fighter that represents Africa as a whole. This is Usman's response to that. And this is why Dricus is saying you can go to your home in New Zealand, which is something Ariel never brings up until after the interview is over. You can go to your home in New Zealand. I'll be in my home of Africa, because now Dricus is defending himself with some of the words that he's saying, because Usman said this, which is just wrong of Usman. I have no problem with it whatsoever, but it's wrong of Usman to say this.
Thank you. I don't know if you saw this, then this question is very pertinent because you're the first African UFC champion. Did you see Dricus, did you hear Dricus Du Plessis, this difficult name to pronounce, his comments about being the African fighter in the UFC?
Oh, I actually saw that, I think it's this week.
So he saw Dricus's interview, where he said the original thing that I showed at the start of the video that this is all about.
Last week, one of my former teammates sent it to me. They're trying to be messy, of course. I saw it, and the thing about me is just I try not to be quick to jump on someone and really kill them for those things that, you know, I'm not part of this cancel culture.
So by mentioning he's not part of this cancel culture thing, he's basically alluding to the fact that what Dricus said, which is that he's born and raised in Africa and he trains out of Africa.
No, it's because the the masses, which can be considered as asses, are going to go to the lowest common denominator, and he's clearly not a black African. Yeah, that's exactly where they're going. So he's responding to that element, and I think it's quite good of him to give that initial response. Let's hear some more.
Africa, and he's fighting out of Africa. So he is the African fighter in the UFC, and he wants to bring a belt home to his home in Africa that isn't the home of Usman or isn't the home of Adesanya. That's just a fact. Is cancelable, which is why he mentions, I don't want to jump on the cancel culture stuff. How is that a cancelable thing? It wasn't cancelable when Leon Edwards brought it up against Bisping whatsoever. But we move on.
But
because Usman's about to say something that if he was white, if he was Arnold Allen and he said this about Leon Edwards, he would be a racist. That is an absolute fact. And the UFC media, MMA media, would absolutely tear him to shreds. If Allen's...
I would agree. I would agree to a point. I would agree to a point. Depending on how he said it. Depending on how it was phrased. If it was phrased in a friendly way, then of course people would draw that sort of connection to it. But yeah, I'll give you that.
Said this about Leon Edwards, he would be torn to shreds by the MMA media. Listen to what Usman's about to say.
though I understand what he's trying to say, but the one thing that I think he's failing to realize is,
no, this is where Kamaru messes up. He should have contextualized or given his opinion of what he thought Dricus Du Plessis was trying to say, and then made the statements.
you know, just because I go to China and my parents are in China, I'm raised in China, that doesn't make me more Chinese than the people from China.
Now, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Again, that's a logical statement, right? Is that not a logical statement? But it's context, isn't it? It's context. Outside of that written statement thing that Ariel read out, this is just messaging. This shouldn't be part of the sport. I mean, there's nothing overtly that was said. He didn't say like, you're not an African, you're not a real African. You know, if that kind of talk was being said, then everyone would be side-eyeing him. But yeah, we're digging and we're searching and we're trying to find things that aren't really there for content. Ariel Helwani, I'm going to stop it there actually. Ariel Helwani, I'm real disappointed. Very disappointed in you, sir. Messy, man. Real messy. You can't be doing things like this. Bring him on to talk about his fight and stuff, who he wants to fight next or whatever, and this and that. Don't make all that stuff up. And then when he goes, start talking other stuff. If I was Dricus Du Plessis, I would make a business decision and say, maybe I'm not going to go on Ariel Helwani. I'd obviously get some exposure by going on there, but if he's going to do me like that, I mean, I'm prepared to talk about many things, but I don't think he's going to do the old ambush journalism, because I'm pretty sure, even though with all of the staff that they have at MMA Hour, I'm pretty sure they're not in the green room with whoever saying, yeah, these are the points that we're going to discuss. Ariel also has added this to the agenda, and he's going to ask you about the Israel Adesanya thing and all the controversy around that. I'm pretty sure that's not taking place. So sort it out. Don't do that to the fighters. The fighters are there to talk about many different things, you know. And you can see that Dricus was frustrated. He was disappointed. And he was also shocked that he was doing what he was doing. What are your thoughts? It's a tricky one. It's definitely a tricky one. Like, comment, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, and make sure you check out the sponsor Supreme of the UK.